privilege? I think privilege is when society's dominant or assumed identity matches with that of your own, and you therefore benefit from that dominance or assumption. And often in cases such as white privilege or other types, that keeps on happening over and over to the point that we just assume it and take it for granted. And that's where problems start. I have many privileges. I'm aware of that. And most of them were privileges that I was given at birth because of my identity as a white, straight male, and the list goes on and on. But I want to talk about one type of privilege that I wasn't just given, and that is Christian privilege, the privilege of living in a Christian society and being a Christian. Growing up, I wasn't Christian. In fact, in elementary school, I always refused to say the Pledge of Allegiance because it ended with the words, "One nation under God." And yet, I did become Christian during college at Georgetown University when I started taking classes on Hindu and Islamic ethics, and I meditated with a Buddhist community. But finally, during my senior year, I settled on Christianity and joined the Episcopal Church. But one of the main reasons I joined the Episcopal Church, and rather than becoming Hindu, for example, was because I realized that if I had become Hindu, that would have been something of a divisive step. It would have cut me off from most of American religious culture, and I would have been left with only a few people I knew with whom I could have shared my spiritual journey. Whereas, as a Christian, I now have formed a connection between myself and the great majority of all Americans, and we can share in that language of Christian faith together. And I benefit from that. That is a privilege. In that way, I chose my privilege. And I conformed my own identity to that of the dominant part of our culture. The more I familiarize myself with Christianity, the easier it becomes for me to take that advantage for granted and forget what it means to others who don't have it. Forget what it meant to me as a small child who refused to say the words, "one nation under God." Christian privilege, therefore, is something that I need to always be reminded of, especially as I'm surrounded by other Christians here at work at Christ Church Cathedral all the time, or at home at Deaconess Ann House, where I'm part of the Episcopal Service Corps. Our society assumes that if you're Christian, then you must be a good person. But it rarely has such a positive assumption for people of other faith, or for people of no faith at all. We often say things such as Christians, we are called to do such and such, and you can fill in the blank with whatever good deed you can think of. Now, of course, that does sound nice, and it's great to remind ourselves to love one another in that way by doing good deeds, but when you say as Christians, that implies that non-Christians are not called to do so, or even are incapable of doing so, which is simply not the case. Now, we also have hymns such as the ones that say words like, "And they'll know we are Christian by our love," which in a room full of Christians is a nice reminder to love your neighbor. But again, as soon as someone who's not Christian enters the room, it becomes isolating or divisive and can come off as a really bigoted statement. Because it is so easy to not question this privilege, I find that more often than not, I need a sort of reality check, reminders that how loving I am often has very little to do with whether I went to church last Sunday or not. And I think it's very important that we, as Christians in a Christian society, remember that fact and remember to check our Christian privilege.